In this video, we will learn how you can update a SharePoint column using Power Automate with null or empty value. Or in other words, how you can clear a SharePoint column. We will cover choice column, lookup column, date column, and user field. So let's start without wasting any more minute. Hello everyone, I am Deepak and welcome to my channel. If you have not yet still subscribed to my channel, click on that button and also the bell icon. So today we're going to learn how we can create a Power Automate flow that can pass empty or null value to a particular SharePoint column. Or in a way I can say that can help us clearing some of the columns value. We are going to pick up the choice, lookup, date, and user column today. Okay, so for this purpose, I have already created a SharePoint list that has all of these four columns here: choice, username, date, and lookup column. And the next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a flow using Instant Cloud Flow. Now, in your case, it can be an automated flow or scheduled flow. Before we start, let me create an item into that list. So I'm going to use the create item action of SharePoint. I'll select my site address, list name, and now I have all of those different columns here. So this is the test one. Choice, I can select one of these choice. User claim, I'm going to just pass my email address here. You can also get this from any previous action or any other system. For the date, I'm going to use the UTC now and selecting my lookup column. Save and test. Okay, so the flow completed successfully, and now if I go back to my SharePoint, I can see the item got created. Now the scenario number one. Let's say I want to update this item and I want to clear this choice column. Of course, very straightforward. I'll go back to my flow. I can remove this action for now here. I'll add another action. Of course, SharePoint update item. I need to provide the site address, list name, ID. I know the ID is 67. Now this is also possible that you are creating a flow where you are getting this ID and the item from some previous step. You can use that as well. I will update the title also so we know that it has been changed. So I'm saying test one updated. Okay, so now the question is how I can clear the choice value. If I save it, okay, now let's say I'm not passing anything and test this one, right? Okay, so flow completed successfully, but if I look at the item, nothing changed, right? It has updated, but choice is still A. So what I need to do, go ahead and add it. Let's say enter the custom value and I pass null. Again, flow completed successfully, and if I go back to my item, the choice is still there. So even if I'm passing a null, not really having any impact on the actual field here. So how I can do it? So instead of passing the null there, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a variable here. Okay, type string, and in this I'm going to say null. And instead of passing the null straight here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use that variable. Now I will save it. Okay, flow completed successfully, and now as you can see here, the choice column is empty now. So the learning is, if you want to clear the choice column, you need to pass the empty string in it. There's another way you can also do that, clear this field if you don't want to create the variable. Creating the variable is much more recommended approach so that you can see what I'm passing. I can also do, let me just quickly update this. So what you can do, instead of passing the empty string, I can actually pass the empty string by typing the single quote. Okay, so you notice what I did? I just go to the expression and I just pass the single quote here and I click OK. Why I'm saying this is not recommended, because you see here, if you look at this, you don't know what's going on. But if I run this flow, it is still clearing the choice column. So you can either create a variable that has the empty string by passing null, or you can actually just pass a single quote empty string into the field directly. Now, one more thing that if you have noticed, even if you have a required column in the SharePoint list, like I have this choice, if you are updating that column or creating using Power Automate, this required flag is ignored. So you can still go ahead and create an item or update an item with the value that is null, even if the column is required. So please keep in mind when you are writing these flows, that if you absolutely need value on a particular column, you need to make sure that you are checking in the flow before actually creating it, because you can pass the null or empty from the flow. Okay, so this was a choice column, very straightforward. Now let's check the lookup. We are having this empty variable. Why not I just pass that empty null here? Okay, so I'm just passing the same empty variable that I have into the lookup column and see what happened here. I'm going to run it and I got the straight error. An error is saying the expected format is integer. So this is the one important point to note. When you are working on the lookup column, even in the flow, you pass this text, right? What you are seeing here. But behind the scene, flow actually passing the actual ID of this column, so that SharePoint can understand which lookup value I need to get from my lookup list. So you cannot pass that variable because it's a string. What about null? I can just go to expression and use the null. This will also fail because null also not going to understand it. So for the lookup, what you need to pass -1. Okay, so to clear a lookup column or lookup field, you need to pass the -1. Now let me confirm this is not empty, so you can see here. Let's run this flow now. Okay, awesome. So flow completed successfully, and now if I go to list, the lookup column is empty now. Now let's jump on to the date. For the date, it's very straightforward. You cannot still use this empty string because date required is to be in the date format. But for the date column, you can use the null. So go to the expression, pass the null here, and now let's test. Okay, so again, flow got completed successfully, and if I go back to my list, the date column is also now empty. Perfect. Another tip for the date column. If you are using format of this column is date and time, you may have noticed that sometime what happened, you are passing one date, but it is not really getting saved or displayed in SharePoint as the same date that you are passing. So maybe I'm passing 23rd, but when I looking into SharePoint, it is showing me 22nd. Or if I'm passing 22nd, it may be showing 21. So I have a quick fix for that if you ever have noticed that kind of issue. Let me go to the column here and include the time and click save. Okay, so now let's say you want to create this item for future time or future date, right? So I'm going to use the date time function here and use the get future time to get some future date from the current UTC. And in the create item, I will use the future time, the calculated time or date and time that I'm doing. Let's test what happened. Okay. Now, if you go back to your SharePoint list, look at the date and time. It's saying 26th of June, 6:03 p.m. If I look at the flow, the time that I'm getting is actually 23rd of June. So SharePoint actually not displaying me the correct time. Practically, it is displaying you the correct time, because what happened when you create an item using Power Automate or any other application, What SharePoint does, it take the time and it convert it to the time zone in which the site is running. My site is running in PST. So that is the conversion of this time to PST. In some scenario, this may hold correct. But let's say you want to actually store the exact time that you are getting. You don't want any conversion to happen at the SharePoint so that end user can see what you are saving. So what you need to do in that scenario? Number one thing, you need to know in which time zone your site is running. As I know, it is running in PST. And if I look at the PST time zone, it is UTC -7, right? So I know that whenever it's going to convert, it's going to remove the 7 hours from the time that I'm passing. Power Automate is going to take the UTC. Okay, so what you need to do, if you are calculating the time, you need to add the difference. So in my case, it's 7 hours. You can either use another date function here that is saying add to time. Base time is the future time or the time that you are getting. Then you need to add the 7 hours to it. And now in the create item, instead of using this time, I'm going to use the time that I'm calculating by adding the difference. Now test. Okay, flow got completed. And now if you look at this item that just got created, the date and time is exactly what I was actually passing. So the tip is, if you are using the date column with date and time enabled, if you want to have the same date and time that you are passing from your flow to be displayed in the SharePoint exactly same, you need to add the offset between these different two time zones so that it can match. Okay, now let's jump on to the next column. That is the user field. Okay, so we learned about the choice column, date column, and lookup column. Either we were passing empty, null, or -1. Pretty straightforward. What about user column? Can I pass empty in it? No. Can I pass -1? You actually need to pass -1, but can I pass it here? No. Can I pass the null? No. Okay, so the user column is a little bit more complex because when you create an item or update an item that is having the user field, you need to pass the username, and to empty these column you need to pass the -1 into username ID. But this column is not really looking for the ID like the lookup column. So the flow display these column differently. It is actually looking for an actual email address that flow is going to actually resolve, get the ID of that email address that you're passing, and then pass that information to SharePoint. We can't really do much here because if you're going to pass some empty, it's going to try to find that empty user in the Active Directory. It's not going to find, it's going to throw an error. If you pass -1, there's no user such -1. So to empty the user field, we need to go step 2, and that is another action in SharePoint that you have already used in your previous flow, that called HTTP. It's very straightforward. It's not very complex action. You need to select the site address. Method is going to be post the URI. So the URI is going to be _API web list getByTitle single quote the name of your list. Okay, so this is the name of the list, flow demo, items bracket, and the ID of the item, right? So in our case, the ID is, so that's going to be the URL for updating an item. Then we have the header. Click on this small icon here so you can easily copy paste. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to paste this information into the comment so you can easily copy paste. Then the actual request body. Again, you can copy paste. It's in the comment field if you want to. So this is going to be a curly bracket single quote __. Remember, there is 2 underscore, not 1. __ metadata single quote colon curly type SP.Data.FlowDemo. So this flow demo you need to replace with your list name. So SP.Data, your list name, list item. Okay, so this is how you can create this type. And then comma, you need to pass the username ID, username, it's the column name, or you can actually copy it from here, what you are seeing here. So username is my column name, and then you need to add ID to it, colon -1. This is what you need to pass to empty this particular column. Okay, save it, complete it. As you can see here, the item that we have created at the beginning, all of these columns are now empty. Now this approach is not only going to work with single selection. If you have a choice column that is multi-select, this approach will work also for the username. Yep, so this is all for today, guys. I hope this will help you when you're working in SharePoint and Power Automate and you are trying to use Power Automate to update the SharePoint list item. Thanks for watching. Keep learning.